you appeared on Shark Tank, and then at some point, sharks were literally fighting for the deal, and everyone was saying, "Okay, I'll match the deal, I'll match the deal, and I'll match the deal." And then you said, "Why don't all of you come up?" And then it eventually became an all shark deal.
It was amazing. I mean, I think that 1 month was the best 1 month, I would say, in the entire Petal journey. 100 orders a day, we were doing 500, 600 orders a day. First 2 days, we were doing 25, 30 lakhs also. Can brass, copper, and bronze be that category, which is all across the globe, and Petal be that brand that takes this category all across the globe? Or to women in general, would be never trade off your.
Hi everyone. Ever think of building a brand which revolves around reviving the heritage art form of India, which also got recognized by UNESCO? Well, welcome to another episode of Clever's D2C Diary. And today with us we have Kirti, the founder, or I should say, the prime Bartanwali of Petal. Welcome, Kirti, to Bangalore, and thank you so much for flying down all the way from Chandigarh to Bangalore for agreeing to do this podcast with us. Super stoked to have you on here. How are you feeling? What's up?
Good. Thank you for having me, Yuvraj. And thank you for the introduction. I'm Bartan Valley at Petal.
Right.
I also think that a lot of people will not know about this UNESCO recognition. So I would like to tell a little bit about that. So, Intangible Heritage Culture is a list that goes out every year to UNESCO from the world.
Okay.
That every country nominates some crafts that this is a skill set that will die out if nothing is done about it. So that's when
Okay.
in 2014, uh, India had sent like Thateras as a craft form to UNESCO, and it was listed in 2014 under intangible heritage culture. So intangible heritage culture is something that you can't see and feel. It's intangible. It's a skill that's not documented anywhere. So it was a journey of that, and we realized it as college kids in 2017 that okay, there is an opportunity here, and we saw those bartans. So we took that opportunity to revive that craft form then.
Crazy.
From there.
So, Petal, how did the name Petal start off? I mean, I know the full form of Petal is Punjab Thatera Art Legacy, but I'm also very sure that this came after the Petal thing. Matlab, what came first, the Petal abbreviation or the Petal full form?
Uh, Abbreviation came first.
Oh,
Yeah. So we just thought that P-TAL. It's very modern, and some of the people just contributed. Like it was a big group of students who were doing this, right? So somebody just suggested that P-TAL. So we were like, wow, it makes a lot of sense. And we are like, okay, there has to be a full
full
form to
form of
this.
it.
And we thought of it. We were like, Punjab Thathera Art Legacy. It came so easily. So it just fit in very well.
So, Kirti, for the audience, introduce people in your own words and also introduce yourself as what do you do at Petal, what is your roles, what is the rest of the people who are doing at Petal, and primarily what is Petal in your words. We want to know from your words.
Okay, from my words, if I think from an emotional point of view, so Petal is something I've seen grow. So it's very close to my heart because from having no numbers at all, from not knowing that whether there's a category for it, we would go anywhere with these utensils. People would just say कि machine है, हाथ की चीज कोई क्यों खरीदेगा? And we wanted to change that pattern कि हाथ के काम में कुछ तो ऐसा है कि मतलब we wanted to sell it, we wanted to prove everyone wrong. It's also when you are young, you have that kind of just कि मतलब करना है probably शायद सिर्फ हवा में तीर मार रहे होते हो, you don't know it's going to succeed or not. So it is little bit about that we wanted to do it because everybody's thought and said it's not possible to revive a craft form like that because brass industry is dominated by machines now. It took machines took over in 19 after 1950s when the steel came in. Brass was completely eradicated from the market. Nobody was using brass plates anymore, brass thalis anymore because steel looked much more fancier also. So nobody knew that what we were giving up on. So that's when we dig in deeper and we kind of realized that there are so many health benefits associated with it. And predominantly when I look at people, it's where we are first creating awareness around long lost traditions of India and roots of India, not forcing anyone to buy. We are telling you that these are the pros and cons of the metal, brass, copper, and bronze, and it's up to you whether you want to buy or not. So, in anything that you see through Petal, you will never see hardcore selling, marketing, discounts. Like, that's just not the ideology of the brand. We want to educate people first, and after that is when we want to sell the product. So, that's basically where I see Petal. And a lot of times people ask us that will we switch to steel, cast iron, and other type of utensils because because people feel that the market for brass and copper is very small. But if we think of it, La Cruse, it's a brand, a cast iron brand. It's a 8,000 crore revenue company, not valuation, revenue. So if they can do it, why can't we? It's cast iron only at the end of the day. They're not doing anything else. Probably some accessories here and there, but no other cookwares. So why can't brass, copper, and bronze be that category, which is all across the globe, and Petal be that brand that takes this category all across the globe? So that's our vision for the company. Take Petal global, because probably yes, one market can be very small for it, but the world can't be small yet.
Right. I mean, even if you get like 1% of the whole population of world, that's even bigger
Bigger,
market
yes,
than the whole of India, I
correct.
think. So
And
how did Petal start off? What's the story of the inception of Petal? How did you meet your co-founders? Where did the idea click from? How did this go on?
so Petal didn't start as a brand. It was a social enterprise, like a social entrepreneurship game for us in the beginning. For first 3-4 years, nobody was taking any money out of it, and we were just trying to do it for the sake of artisans, where we didn't even know how to price the products. And we were so insecure in pricing the products because we were like, who is going to pay that much for it? But the costing in itself is
Right,
very high for the product.
right.
So, I mean, when back in 2017, when I graduated from college, and a lot of people think that I studied commerce, but no, I am a fashion designer and I'm a designer at heart. I'm an artist at heart for sure, and I love creating processes. I love understanding processes and then probably work on them to make people's lives easier. That's something I love doing, and that's what I've realized about myself very recently. But going back to how it started, so my brother was in Shriram College of Commerce. He studied he was studying BCom
Okay.
from there, and there's a society called Enactus. They take up social entrepreneurship projects where they identify the cluster, and cluster nahi, matlab a area or geography that needs help, that needs revival of a sort, or clean drinking water, things like that. Like there are dairy artisans, dairy farmers who need to sell their products in the market. So they kind of enable those supply chains for them and help them, educate them, train them. So that's exactly when the journey of Petal started, when my brother pitched the idea to me. And he said, see, there are artisans, you understand crafts. Why don't you go and make something with these artisans, which we will sell in the market? I was like, okay, I don't have to sell, right? He's like, no, you don't have to sell, because I was like, I don't know how to sell. Then he's like, we just have to make. I was like, okay, great, sounds very nice. I can create, you can sell. So look like a good combination. And because after college, after 4 years of studying fashion design, like making clothes, I realized the industry is highly saturated, and I don't want to make clothes because I would I wouldn't be able to make a mark in that industry, is what I had realized in college, because there was nothing extraordinary about me when I was creating clothes. But there was something extraordinary about me when I was looking at the crafts and creating something with crafts. I loved crafts in college, and whatever exposure I got to crafts, I understood karigars and artisans. So that's how when I went, I met the artisans, and I kind of realized, until I saw the craft, I was like, what will I do with buttons? What can you possibly do with buttons? But when I looked at the skill, I was so emotional about the whole idea. So there was no Petal then, right? So it was just a decision for me that, to do this, I have to live with the artisans. I have to understand every bit, how they think, how they work, all of those things, and probably start from there. So in August 2017 is when I thought that I will move to Amritsar. So I moved to Amritsar in August 2017. and 3 2, and then we had a great support from government of Punjab at that point of time. Government of Punjab was great to us because of the inactive students also. Kids would like just come and sit, and DC officer, like DC officer at that point of time, IAS officer, they have so many things to do, but he would always give us 2 hours of his day to just talk to us and mind map on the ideas, and and we got a lot of subsidies at that point of time. We didn't have to pay for any exhibitions, any stalls, so we got a lot of market exposure also for free at that point of time. And our first range of products was ready in say 1 or 2 months, where we didn't really go for the bartans, but because these people were making very very big bartans, so that's when we decided that why don't we innovate the products. So they were making parat. We said that okay, let's not sell parat, let's sell parat clock.
Oh.
So, so I don't have a picture of it right now, maybe, but it must be somewhere. But we removed the back of the parat and fixed a dial on top of it, and it was a parat clock. Then there was like a shape of planter, which we did like a double side clock. Then there were the shapes of glasses, which we said let's make it vases.
Okay.
So then they used to make all round shapes. So we said let's do round teapots and teacups and stuff like that.
And
Modernizing
this was your idea?
So it was me, and then there was this one more artist who was from the government side. She was really old. She was like 90 years old or something.
wow.
She had so much energy. 90 तो नहीं थी, I think 73, 74 होंगे, but she had so much energy. Oh my God. And she was also there with me. So we together were doing it, and it was quite a journey designing the products with them and I didn't want to change the way they were working. So I had to first understand how they were working and then kind of add value to that. Ki, okay, now, and then that is how Petal came into existence. That the first range of products was ready. सबसे पहले तो products ही चाहिए थे बेचने के लिए. उसके बाद we started going to a lot of exhibitions. Then we got a lot of head turns in those exhibitions, where a lot of people were very excited that Petal is back in the market. In fact, I still remember our first exhibition. One of the uncle came to the stall, and we had only taken some samples of hadn't paid artisans also. We didn't have money. We were like, please kar do. And they did it also. So first thing, when we sold out everything in the exhibition, we went and gave them all the money.
Wow.
But in that exhibition, a lot of people came and they were begging कि आप samples ही बेच दो हमें. I was like, अच्छा मतलब इतना तो कुछ नहीं है इसमें, but there were people who understood the value of it, that it's made by hand, and I really appreciate those people because we can't make it again now.
Right.
Because some of those artisans are not even there with us anymore. So that's the kind of emotion that's associated with these utensils कि मतलब probably पता नहीं कल मिलेगा कि नहीं मिलेगा तो खरीद लो. So a lot of people came and bought in all the samples from us.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this started like booming probably 2 to 3 years after when you started building products and all of that. But before that, how did you meet your co-founders? What's the story behind you, your brother reaching out to you, but then you had gone on to have co-founders which were like all 3 different colleges. So how did that happen?
So Aditya, he is currently the CEO and co-founder also of the company. So he was my brother's junior in SRCC. And in COVID, there was nothing much to do for anyone. He was also at home.
Right.
And he really enjoyed the marketing bit of things. So creating content, we used to create very good content, very good stories, and he enjoyed that bit of things. He really, really had a lot of passion behind that. So that's when he told me in 2020 that what do you think if I join Petal full time? And that time we were still trying to make ends meet, and there were still no sustainable sales or momentum as such that every month we are getting sales, and we had not also tested, like we were only dependent on exhibitions to sell our products. We had not tested the online market until COVID. So in COVID, we first time got in a digital marketing on board, a marketeer on board who is still working with us and is full time with us. He's a
nice.
very dear friend of mine also, Sushant. So he started marketing our products, and we saw great results online during COVID. Probably the CAC and all had also gone down at that point of time because everybody was spending time online. We didn't know how much of the orders we actually materialized, but we started getting 10 lakh worth of orders every month. from
Oh.
the time of COVID. That's when the business actually got in momentum. That's when my other co-founder Gaurav, who I was convincing for before that 1 year, that why don't you join Fetal, because he wanted to do. He was in his government job. He was some inspector, uh, some mining inspector. He was mining inspector,
Okay.
and I used to. But he didn't want to be in government job. That was like कि घर वालों ने बोला कि ये तो करना ही है. Like this is the security because the entire family is in government job. So he's like, so that's why this is something I've done, but I want to eventually do business. So, and he was exploring different businesses. So I told him that why don't you just try to join Peakal and see how it works. Yeah, so then he was like, okay. So he was like, he used to be involved in things, but he hadn't given that decision. But in COVID, all three of us came in together, and we took that decision during COVID when we saw the 10 lakh ka momentum in the business. We were like, okay, market to hai. Like we had discovered product market fit by then. So for him to give up on his government job was going to be a big deal also.
Yes.
And then for Aditya to give up on his corporate career was again going to be a big deal also. Because I don't think there's a U-turn from a startup to a corporate. You will have to you will also know that well.
Never.
So it was a very big call for both of them to do something like that. And I did not want to force any one of them into it because I myself didn't know where this is going to go. So that is how we met. That is how we three came together. COVID was the time, the
Interesting.
enabler of the business.
The catalyst.
Yes, the catalyst.
Crazy. So one co-founder comes from a corporate background, one co-founder comes from a government job background, one co-founder is a designer, perfectionist sort of person. How does the dynamic actually looks like when you all three of you are sitting, brainstorming and doing all of this thing? Has any of these come into picture कि यार कभी तीनों बैठ के और ऐसी बात कर रहे हैं, but there is some disconnect between some of them, and then finally there is this one thing that okay ये करते ही हैं, let's do it anyways.
तो जब हमने दिल्ली में स्टोर खोलना था, so there was a lot of discussion around it. So I and Aditya were convinced. We were like, because we had gone to so many exhibitions and we used to do great in Delhi exhibitions. So we were like, this is going to be the best thing in the life for us. Gaurav was not very confident about it. But when two of us are at the same side, he had to say, okay, fine, I will trust your gut and let's do it. So like there was a lot of conversation around that because the store rentals were going to be huge at that point of time. We were a bootstrapped company. It was a partnership firm. We were not planning to do a fundraise until then at least. So I think there used to be discussions like that कि अच्छा अब ये store खोलना है या फिर marketing spends बढ़ाने हैं and all, तो we all know कि वो तो eventually बढ़ाने ही पड़ते हैं. So there hasn't been, but store was like in the beginning of the thing, a big move for us and a very early move for us.
Got it. So Kirti, now I want to shift the gears a little bit from your personal to a more business side of it. So let's start off by understanding. So what my understanding of the current industry, the cookware industry, is that it's a very unorganized sector, especially in such a niche that you are building in copper, brass, and like legacy art. How do you make a brand in such a niche industry, such an unorganized industry, and what exactly were the challenges that you started off with that you thought, okay, let's pick one by one and start solving each and one of them?
So see, I think those challenges still exist, but now we have a bigger team and we are able to do it at a product level, eradicate those challenges bit by bit. But in the beginning, when we talk of the unorganized market versus creating a brand in the market, so with brand comes in a lot of responsibility. You are answerable to people. You have to answer their call at 2 a.m. also at night.
Right.
And because with the founder connect, founder connect with the brand has become very solid in past couple of years. So people will directly reach out to the founders. If they know that they are not being able to, their problem is not being tackled properly, they'll reach you out on LinkedIn or probably on your personal Instagram pages and stuff like that. And somehow my one number is like out there everywhere. So I get a lot of calls. Even now I get a lot of calls that I'm solving a lot of queries or at least telling people ki please ye solve karo jaldi. Things like that. But I think in the beginning, the trust bit that versus the unorganized market versus the organized market is what is the quality of raw material they are using versus what is the quality of raw materials we are using. So we started telling people about it that we are using premium quality of raw materials, and after getting the product at your home, you're not satisfied, you can still return the products. There
Hmm.
is nothing like you're tied with the products. And before that, we were doing a pre-sales education that how to use these utensils, how to maintain these utensils. So I will say that there is a lot of advantage that unorganized market got out of the education that we had created.
Hmm.
But with buying from a brand versus a non-brand is a lot of responsibilities on the shoulders of the brand. So you can always, so there, of course, the market is smaller for the brands,
Hmm.
but there is always a customer who prefers buying from a brand rather than an unorganized market just for the quality bit of things.
So can you help us understand how do you calculate the market, the cookware market in India and globally, and where do you stand in the market right now? How big is the market right now, Indian, globally, and where are you?
I don't know the current recent numbers exactly. I don't know. But last when I saw, so Muradabad in itself had exported $2 billion worth of brass,
Wow.
only brass. I am not even getting in copper. And then when you look at Amazon numbers, they are crazy in its own self because Amazon US copper bottles are huge. They are selling about 15 lakh worth of copper bottles. Like the sales of copper bottles is 15 lakh rupees daily,
Wow.
only bottle. Then there are other smaller categories like Moscow Mule mugs, which is only made in copper. And there are other shuffling dishes which they use for serving and stuff. So there
Hmm.
is a decent sort of market. So whenever we have to like tell our the market that we can reach out to. So for brass and copper, there is no number, like there is no data on it. But kitchenware and cookware market is growing at a 15% CAGR,
Okay.
and I think currently it's at somewhere around 2000 crores or something.
Got it.
Hmm.
And so counterintuitive to what people would think कि इतना niche category है, ज़्यादा नहीं बिकता होगा and all of that. In US, the market is actually even more. That is what you're seeing, right?
Problem nahi that good part about US market is it's dollars, right? So
Right.
10 orders in US versus 60 orders in India is the same thing.
Okay.
So the D2C game is a lot bigger there. If we get 200 orders a day there, so we would be doing about I think 2.5 crores a
Okay.
day there.
Wow. That brings me to another part of this strategy, which is pricing. I've always learned that pricing is an iterative strategy. There is no one size fits all approach to this. So you come up in the market with some pricing, you then get bashed that hey, that's too much, and then you go back to the drawing board. How did this work out for you? How did you price the products? Were you EBITDA positive from the very beginning, and how did all of these things can get into picture for you?
Pricing came in a lot later for us, where we started to understand that what are the expenses associated with the D2C brands, like the logistics cost, the marketing spends, then the return costs. Apart from that, the landing costs at all the warehouses.
Hmm.
Apart from that, then you have to uh, take in consideration all the salaries that you have to pay people. So we still know that 70 to 80% margin is where people have to play, but it's very difficult to be there in India. It's not possible of 70 to 80% of gross margin, at least for a business like ours. A lot of businesses like jewelry can support it, but for business like ours, then people are going to say कि "Okay, चाहिए तो ये तो खरीद ही नहीं सकते अब."
And I think the cost of raw materials is again a commodity. So the market also affects a lot of raw
Hmm.
materials for you. How does that play out for you?
So the biggest challenge for us in the beginning was people were used to buying in kgs
Hmm.
in this category. So per kg, people used to be, so we had to create that shift in behavior where we said we will only sell price wise, like a
Hmm.
piece wise, sorry.
Hmm.
We'll only sell piece wise is the kind of mind shift. And it's a huge mind shift when you look at an Indian audience,
Hmm.
where we are saying that it's 2.5 kg. It's not like you're hiding the weight of the product. We are telling you the weight of the product, but we are like, we'll only do it piecewise. So it's
Okay.
like if you go to Tanishq, you will probably know that the gold is expensive there. The making is higher there.
Right.
If it's 60,000 rupees per, I think like 12 grams. In Tanishq, you'll probably pay 20,000 rupees premium. So 80,000 rupees per
Okay.
12 grams will be the thing there. But people still go there, right? So that's the shift in mind that we were creating, that quality hai, you'll have to pay. And in online, it's very difficult to actually measure the weight and send to the consumer.
Right.
So we will do it piecewise only.
Got it. Another thing which is very interesting about Petal that I find is that you appeared on Shark Tank, and then at some point, sharks were literally fighting for the deal, and everyone was saying, "Okay, I'll match the deal, I'll match the deal, and I'll match the deal." And then you said, "Why don't all of you come up?" And then it eventually became an all shark deal, and then that episode went viral, right? How was the post Shark Tank feature for you? The orders, the buzz around it, people started covering you. How was the experience after Shark Tank?
It was amazing. I mean, I think that 1 month was the best 1 month, I would say, in the entire Petal journey. From the perspective of, we had never seen that kind of spike on the website. From 100 orders a day, we were doing 500, 600 orders a day.
Wow.
And imagine the kind of stress we were going through. Amazon, we were growing brilliantly, but during that time of Shark Tank, it got like crazy. We were doing some 14, 15 lakh worth of orders every day on Amazon. And first 2 days, we were doing 25, 30 lakhs also. So, and Amazon orders are more important than your website orders because Amazon policies are very strict. If you don't send out their orders, they'll block your account. So you can't afford to do that. So our first half in the warehouse would completely go in the Amazon orders, and the second half would be for the website orders. And we were at any point of time at 500 order pendency on the website orders, and it was
Okay.
so stressful. But it was good type of stress. That's the kind of stress
Good problems
everybody
to have.
wants to
Yeah.
have. Like people were, the trucks would be full, the courier trucks, and 3, 4, 5 trucks used to come every day to take the load. And that's the best
Did
one.
we anticipate this, or was this unexpected?
See, we had the inventory. We were actually thinking that being the Indian audience, so we would increase on the low value products like ghee pots and probably parat and like lower value products. Okay, but the opposite happened. We ended up selling more of copper water dispensers, which is one of the most expensive products on the website. So
Okay.
we were the best thing about that time was we were prepared with the inventory. So we
Hmm.
had the products to like give out to the people, which what really broke was we couldn't anticipate that the space we are working out of is going to really get cramped. And you can't take those
Okay.
decisions of shifting into a bigger space before you see the kind of pump you're going to have.
And what about before Shark Tank? I often see these podcasts of Shark Tank featured founders, and they're like, we were not able to sleep the
हाँ,
episode
हाँ,
before.
बिल्कुल.
So how was the environment just before the shoot or the final day when you're about to meet the sharks?
I think it was something surreal because you're watching like first season gone by, second season gone by, and I would tell to both Aditya and Gaurav, guys, let's go to Shark Tank. No, but then we were a partnership firm. You have to be a private limited company to go there. So that's why we didn't go in first 2 seasons. And so probably had to happen in third because I had probably manifested it ki we will go on Shark Tank. But 5 Shark deal I was also not expecting. I was just praying ki bezati na ho. But national television pe, that is what I wanted. But I didn't anticipate 5 Shark deal for sure.
But tell me this, what stops any other brand to jump into the same category and build around it with probably a huge or a bigger funding? How do I create defensibility around my product? Because defensibility is something that we get to hear a lot from even investors or even ourselves ki bhai, what is stopping anyone else to come into this market? So what is that defensibility factor that I can build in this brand?
I think a very, very strong hold on your supply chain. That's a
Okay.
backbone of any business, which
Mhm.
most founders don't even take in consideration.
Hmm.
And solid, strong vendor relations, supply chain enable successful businesses on the front end. All the marketing efforts are going to go. Shark Tank would be a waste activity for us if we didn't have inventory in the warehouse.
True.
It would be just some lost sales on the table.
I think that would even make the brand look bad because they're placing orders but they're not able to fulfill it.
So I think a solid, strong supply chain, and the supply chain of brass and copper is complex.
Okay.
So for any big player to get into the market, it is going to take some time. So I don't know if somebody with bigger funding wants to try their hands on it.
So, can you explain the whole supply chain to us, right? From procuring raw copper or brass, giving them to Thateras, all the way to shipping to the US. How does the supply chain actually looks like?
So there has to be a lot of planning at every stage, right? From the time when we were procuring for the artisans and taking care of the quality of the raw materials we are procuring, to the times when we enabled artisans to do it themselves, like where we say that, now one of us, the best story, which is most powerful story for me, is one of the artisans who was unemployed during COVID. He unemployed because he was working in some dhage ka factory, and they laid off people, of course, because
COVID was
COVID.
there.
So he joined his father's business into making utensils, and right now he's employing 11 people. He has shifted his base from Jandiala Guru, Punjab to Jagadri, Haryana, which is closer to us, so that he can give us supply. And he has gotten a lot of artisans to move from Muzaffarnagar and Muradabad and come like these big hubs and come and work in Jagadri with him, basically.
Wow, that's so strong.
That's a very powerful story, and he has an iPhone right now. I get very happy seeing it. I just feel that wow, like we have created some impact. Like when I see people make money out of Petal, like the artisans make money out of Petal, that is the most powerful thing, and that's when I stay grounded. That's what reminds me that this is why we started. Right. So to get people to believe in you so much, to take that kind of step for the brand, it requires different type of relation. So so of course he's buying his own raw materials right now. And we have taken guarantee of the artisans with the vendors that they will pay you on time, just give them some credit. So that kind of negotiation has to be there with the raw material vendors in whole. And then apart from that, you have to have checks on all the different processes that's going. So everything cannot be like thuk, 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 thuk. If you see a process of a kadhai being made, you will be like, oh my God, why all of it has to be done by hand? Can we make their lives easier some way? So then getting in the kind of industrial designers and, people who are thinking that how to make their lives easier, how to make those furnaces where they can do their jobs quicker. Yeah. And then moving forward to like all the buffing bit of things, tin coating is a huge area of debate in whole, right? Tinning is also being done in US on a lot of utensils, and there was a lot of myth around it that it's not good for your health, it's poisonous. So we had to work around eradicating those myths that it's completely safe. It in fact makes your utensils non-stick in nature. So I mean, when the products are buffed and all, then there is a quality checkpoint at the artisans' warehouses itself. Then the product moves to our warehouse. There is another check of quality. And then a lot of assembly bit that happens in our own warehouse, where the handles and knobs and lids are put on top of it, so that it's all insulated and easy to use for the consumer. That's something we did very recently because we wanted to make customers' lives easier. So we have to make artisans' lives easier. We have to make customers' lives easier. So we have to constantly keep thinking that how do we bridge the gap and make it easier for everyone.
So I've got the idea now. I'm positioning myself as a founder who wants to build a brand in this category, and I want to be international from day one, like how Petal did, right? Some of the best thing about Petal is that you've been an export business as well from the very day one, and you've been doing amazing in that. So I want to do that, and I have got the gap in the market. I've got the very good advice of sorting out supply chain from the very get go. Now I want to prototype the first product. how do I begin with what kind of product to pick, what kind of pricing to put on it, how do I market that and made my first sale. But before all of that, how do I pick that one product that would not bleed my pockets, that would take a lot of money, but also not be so shallow that would not perform in the market?
See, so for us, it was different at that point of time. We tried our products in exhibitions.
Okay,
We were not bleeding on D2C at all. D2C didn't
nice.
exist at all for first 3 years for us. So exhibition gave a lot of conviction, and there was this learning from exhibitions only that I felt that when people came uh, to our stalls, they were more excited to buy cookware and kitchenware rather than any of the home decor items. So
Okay.
that insight actually stuck me during COVID, that why are we working so hard on innovating the products? Let's just sell what they have. So
Hmm.
that's when we did a photo shoot with kadhais and patilas and patilis, that they already have, they know how to make it. They know exactly how to make it. And just added little bit extra beautification elements to it so that it looks beautiful. It looks a little, I would say, design sensitivity has to be there. That sensibility around design has to be very strong if anybody is thinking of going international. So we were not thinking of anything of that sort. We were just thinking to crack the market at that point of time, and it worked. Kitchenware, cookware, basic stuff worked for us because we learned from the insights in exhibition that people are more attracted towards kitchenware and cookware. So I think rather than directly launching on a D2C website and
Hmm.
doing meta ads for it or Google ads for it, the better way is to test market between people, among the audience itself.
Hmm. And what better way to do that than exhibitions,
Yes.
right? Nice. Next comes the part where you shake hands with artisans, right? So I think in Shark Tank also you mentioned that you got the average income of an artisan from 2,000 rupees to more than 25,000 rupees and sometimes even lakhs of rupees. You just said that a guy got an iPhone who was like unemployed at one point. But I also wanted to understand what makes them stick with you. Like, why can't they go and sell these products out in the market on their own and probably save the margins that they must be bearing with you? What is in it for them that you bring to the table that they stick with you so loyally?
I mean, that I think Gaurav will be able to answer that better. But I think it's just the relationship with the people. Like, so people in Punjab are very emotional. So
Okay.
they are emotional beings. So it's very rare that they will want to step over you. Very, very
Hmm.
rare number
Hmm.
of people would want to do that. And also sustainability. Like they will go sell it out in the market. Those vendor will pay them after like 40, 50 days.
Hmm.
Whereas they know that they will anytime call ki bhai payment kar do, and we will make sure that they get it. So it's relationship building. It's kind of keeping them in your mind whenever okay, we are doing it. So that bit of thing has to be
Got
there.
it. And from a village where this was being built to international markets where now almost 50% of your revenue comes from international market, right? How did this journey of a product happen? Like right from the village all the way to a customer in the US? What are the nitty-gritties that are involved, the customs, the approvals, the FDAs and FSSAIs and everything? What are those that I want to keep a hold of?
So I think it's actually we were very lucky with the category that we are in. So custom duties are not applicable up to $800 in our category.
Okay.
Apart from that, also the thing is that IEC certificate is the max you need. Once you have import export certificate, is you can start exporting your products. You just have to open an account with DHL Express or UPS, United Postal Couriers, and they will ship out the products for you. So it's not that complicated. And the best part is there is no COD in US, so you get the money upfront.
Nice. And but what about the tug of war between margins versus fair play for artisans? At one side, you are at a place where you want to keep healthy margins, be EBITDA positive, have to make some money. But on the other hand, you also want to have a fair play of share with the artisans because they are the ones who are building the product. What is that sweet spot for you that does not hamper both the sides of the business?
So artisans are now like they understand their margins, so they will never compromise on it. And we don't even ask them to do that. We know that okay, if they have to make 300 rupees per product, so they have to do it. Yeah, so we will never go out and tell them that please isko 100 rupees kar do ya 200 rupees kar do. That game to we are not really getting into, that where we are asking artisans to cut down the margins. There are a lot of other ways where we can do cost cutting, a lot of operational charges that can go down with what is happening on the floor for us. For example, like the margins should come from the floors. 10 people are actually required to pack the product, or 8 people can do it. So very strong hold on KPIs, KRAs is required from, see, it's very difficult to say from day one. If somebody is coming building with an experience, so it's best to have it from day one, but it's very difficult to have it from day one. But we have put in those checks on point, that okay, from which vendor we are getting maximum amount of products, where we have to refurbish it in the warehouse itself. So a lot of quality issues we have to solve again. So we will call out the vendor. We'll say कि भाई आप अपना, या तो we will only buff all your products. You don't do it only for us, and whatever money you are paying your buffing guy, you just leave that as a margin to us, and we'll get it buffed in house. So those are the type of things that you can do to save up on some margin, and anything saved is a saved money by
Right.
the end of it.
Yeah, money saved is money earned.
Yeah.
But how would you do this at a scale when you are like 50 team employees or like that, but you also want to keep healthy margins on even the floor level? Is it some data points that you look at? Where do you crunch that data from? What exactly is the data that I need to look at? Because data is there, but what questions to ask is the most important thing. So how did you do it in the early days?
Early days, we were not doing it okay.
Acha.
I'll be very honest. Early days, but we were working out of such a small place with so little, so less number of people, and our AOVs are high, right? So our AOV has always been about 5,000 to 6,000 rupees. So we didn't also have to, at that stage, like when the scale was not a lot, we didn't have to go into the number of people working, because because it was such a small place, it could accommodate only number of people.
Right.
Now we have shifted to a bigger place, so it becomes a problem because you can overemploy very
Right.
easily. But at that point of time, there were no buffing machines and all that time. So we had to ensure that everything comes properly from there. We put in a buffing machines a lot later. That also we trained some of the guys who were packing in the warehouse only on how to operate that machine also. So in the early days, we were not able to do it, to be very honest. So in early days, so the best thing is, because your CAC and all is also, the ROAS is very healthy when you just start. At least it was always above 5 for.
Okay.
So when you have above 5 ROAS and your COGS is also higher, so you COGS and other CM1 से ऊपर वाले जो भी खर्चे होते हैं, वो भी अगर आपके थोड़े ज्यादा है तो चल जाती है, क्योंकि by the end of it, ROAS is very healthy.
Got it. As a first time founder, I would not know the full forms of CAC, ROAS, and COGS. So, could you explain what exactly is ROAS, CAC, COGS, CM1, CM2? How do you keep your.
So this also we learned after like our first round of funding. Before that, we had a normal formula of P&L where it was basic, right? These formats also we learned a lot. We learned a lot later. So COGS is cost of goods sold. So it's basically the if it's 100 rupee product, 30 rupees went into making the product, and then there will be other landing costs into it. For example, it took 2 rupees for this product to land into the warehouse, so 32 rupees. After that, the remaining 78 rupees will be my gross margin. Now below that, you will have the amount associated with shipping every order, right? Which is like your logistics expenses and referral fees expenses if you're selling on Amazon, other marketplace expenses, all of those expenses, everything other than marketing basically will go in above your CM1. So that will be your, then you'll be left with the CM1 margin, which will probably, it should be around at least 40 to 50% for a healthy brand. And then after that, there are going to be your marketing spends, all the marketing that you're going to be doing on Amazon, Google, Meta. Yeah, majorly performance marketing expenses, and although I mean, actually, it's very different from different people. For some, all the commissions they pay their salespeople would also go in here, because that is also any variable costs basically will also go in above your CM2. So you will have channel margin too, which should, a healthy channel margin should look like 20% at least, and below that will go on the fixed expense.
Got it. And would you say this is the industry standard for the whole of D2C, or this is specific to
No,
Petal?
I think it's standard for D2C. I mean, these are the only type of expenses that actually you incur. Variable expenses can shift for different people who are using 3PLs. The variable expenses can be different. Like CM1 ke upar there will be a percentage associated with processing of every order if you are using 3PL, right? It's some 7 to 8 rupees per order, 3PL charges, or sometimes 25 rupees depending on the scale. So, I mean, on top of that, sometimes a lot of people break the sales down into like net sales, gross sales, discounts. So they look at everything differently, that how much money they are currently shedding into discounts. But we look straight at net. So
Got
that
it.
can be different for different. And I think channel wise sale is also very important, like which really helps you give insights into how which channel is performing. So Shopify for us, it's like Shopify, Amazon. So how are these two channels performing? Then we don't look at any other channels because it's not major for us.
And when you're looking at so many metrics, what is that one metric that you would say is your thank God metrics? That okay, thank God this is fine. Everything else is uh, not properly in place or not performing that well. But if this metric is fine, probably I'll break even or I'll do that. What is that for
I
you?
think bulk sale. So for us, it's because of the awareness of brand. There has been a lot of word of mouth, corporate gifting, wedding gifting, so that keeps
Hmm.
coming in. So whenever you have at least 30 to 40% of contribution on your bulk sales, that's a highly profitable month. So basically, bulk sales agar ho raha hai, so we are very happy. We know that it's going to be a profitable month
That's
for
a
us.
thank God metric.
Yeah, that's our thank God battery. But apart from that, you also ask CAC and ROAS.
Right.
So ROAS is returns on ad spend. So if you are spending 10 lakh rupees on a monthly basis and you are generating 30 lakhs worth of sales, so 3 is the ROAS, right?
Okay.
And CAC is cost of customer acquisition. So it's
Okay.
like how much you are spending to acquire one customer. So if suppose somebody is buying for 5,000 rupees for you from you, like then there are other metrics also, lifetime customer value and all of those things. I'll not get into it. It'll get too technical.
Got it. So I've now got a brand. I have the idea. I saw the market gap. I have built my first product. I'm doing good sales. I have scaled to a point. Now I'm shipping international. I've got the cross border logistics and everything sorted. You told me about how easy that is to get into the US and everything. I have now reached a scale of more than 10 crores, more than 50 crores of annual revenue. What are some safeguards that I now need to think of once you're at that scale, which you probably missed out in your early days, but now you cannot live without it? What would that be for you?
Customer experience, customer feedback
Okay.
becomes very important because now the customer base is a lot larger. So you have to continuously start collecting the customer fee. A lot of people will reach out to you when they have a problem with the product. But I am the kind of customer, I will never make that much effort. I will just not buy from the brand again. I will not make that much effort to actually write a mail and say your product is pathetic. So I think customer feedback is the key that any brand should get into once they hit that scale which they were dreaming to. So and also on top of it, start mapping that customer feedback to every product to kind of eradicate problems that exist in the product itself. We have changed a lot of things about our products based on customer feedbacks and customer complaints.
Okay.
Yeah.
Story time. Let's hear some customer feedback that you got that actually made some changes in the product.
Yeah, that we are doing. We are continuously doing that. That is a very big part of our business. Copper water dispenser, our bestseller. We knew that the tap we are using, it's an Indian looking tap, टूटी जो होता था पहले के टाइम
Right,
में
right,
होता
right.
था. So we were using that tap. It had leakage issues. We couldn't solve for it. In that tap there had to be leakage issue. It was a big problem. The product is also contributes to a major of our sale. Major chunk of our sales comes from that product. So we have changed the tap of it and we have no complaints.
Wow.
I can proudly say it's a best selling product now without complaint. With no leakages, nothing. Before that, we changed the packaging. So earlier, what we started, so very funny, during Shark Tanks, we sold only that copper dispenser. We sold so many of those copper water dispensers, shipped out. out of 10, 5 people would call me and complain that your product is pathetic, it's leaking.
Oh my God.
And it's a horrible journey then. You don't have customer support agents taking care of things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
So after that, we thought कि अच्छा चलो अब टैप लगा कर ही नहीं देते, टैप ही अलग से दे देते हैं कि खुद फिक्स कर लो. So we started doing that. Complaints came down. ज्यादा से ज्यादा क्या कस्टमर वुड बी लाइक मैं खुद नहीं फिक्स करूंगा. सो वी वर राइटिंग इट ऑन द वेबसाइट, यू हैव टू फिक्स इट योरसेल्फ. सो वी वर लाइक वेबसाइट पे तो लिखा हुआ है अब देखिए फिक्स खुद करना है. दे वर लाइक हमने नहीं देखा. सो वी लाइक अच्छा चलो अर्बन क्लैब बुक कर देते हैं, दे विल कम एंड फिक्स द टैप फॉर यू. सो वी हैव डन दैट अर्बन क्लैब बुकिंग फॉर अ लॉट ऑफ आवर कस्टमर्स आल्सो इन
okay,
early
so
days.
instead of the complaints coming directly to you, they were thinking कि शायद हमने ही गलती कर दी होगी इसलिए लीक हो रहा है.
नहीं, फिर उसके बाद वो लीकेज का प्रॉब्लम एक्चुअली कम हो गया बिकॉज
अच्छा.
ट्रांजिट में इतना हिलता था तो वो
हम्म.
ऑटोमेटिकली टैप इधर उधर हो जाती थी और लीकेज आता था. तो उसको लगाने का प्रोसेस भी बहुत टीडियस था वो वाली टैप को फिक्स करने का, बिकॉज वो ओल्ड टाइप का टैप था, उसका ओल्ड मैकेनिज्म. फिर उसके बाद देन ऑल्सो आफ्टर शार्क टैंक वी रियलाइज कि अच्छा कंप्लेंट्स तो अभी भी है. एंड एटलीस्ट 100 कस्टमर्स में से 10 people are still reaching out to us and saying it's very difficult to fix this tap. So let's again start to fix it, but packaging थोड़ा better कर देते हैं. So we made like molds for the packaging where it goes in a proper condition. It's also a very big and heavy product, so we have to
Right.
think on a lot of levels, and there's a lot of expense that goes in each time we increase a layer of packaging. So then we did that कि ठीक है एक टैप लगाकर भेजते थे. फिर भी complaints 100% तो नहीं eradicate हुआ कि still there were complaints where people were saying that it's leaking. So we wanted to completely like eliminate that problem. So that's when we realized that the last problem is this only, that just change the tap. So now we have finally changed the tap and there is no complaint on the product.
Wow.
Like in whatever 300-400 units we sell, 1 or 2 odd complaints we get. That too also कि your tap में से पानी नहीं निकल रहा है. So we were like, okay, we'll send you a new tap. And it's also slightly easier to fix.
Nice. Any funny story you remember around customer complaints that ये एक review ऐसा आया था?
So I'll tell you, it's not funny, it's actually very scary. In the early age, one customer, COVID के बाद ही we shipped out her order and she got the so our product has this problem that if the layers of packaging is not proper, they'll tarnish in transit only. And if somebody is
Okay.
getting a product in tarnished condition, it's not a very good place, right? The
course.
customer experience is not.
Yeah.
So she called me and she yelled so much. गंद बेच रहे हो आप and so many things she told me that I just started to cry.
Oh.
I couldn't cry on phone, so I cut the phone and I just cried for 1 hour that why am I doing this to myself? I don't want to do this. So I just be very careful that whenever if I have to complain also about a product, I'm polite. Because that customer, I still remember her name. I will not take her name, but I still remember her name. And I have a number saved with me. But that was such a horrible experience for me that I was like, oh God, why do I have to do this? But that the experience was also not nice. But sometimes customers can be very impolite and very unkind. I mean, recently also this incident happened that the mapping of the product was not correct on the back end.
Okay.
So when the Shopify mapping is not correct and the EasyCom mapping says something else, the warehouse team will dispatch wrong items. That mapping bit is a problem also. So you just can't go to your Shopify store and suddenly decide that today I want to use this SKU for so and so products, right? So what we used to do was we used to just go and change the SKU and keep the product name same and change the picture. We didn't know the impact it's going to create on front end.
Okay.
It's on the back end where like the people are dispatching the orders. Now the product is mapped on easy ecom to the old product only. The old product will only go. So then this customer, he called me. He called, I don't know how did he get my number, but he directly called me and I was like, sorry, like it's a mistake from our side and we'll amend it. We'll do it just now. But he was not, I don't know, something came into him or what happened. He just called my customer care agent and he yelled so much at her. It was almost inhuman the way he spoke to her.
Oh my God.
And then I got very upset. I was like, now I'm not taking this. I texted the customer. I was like, I'm returning your money right now. This is not how you can talk to anyone. And I'm very sorry what happened to you. I'm genuinely sorry to what happened, but I'm refunding your money. Then he was like, no, I want the product. I was like, no, getting the product. I will refund your money. He was like, you can't record by call. I was like, our all lines are recorded. What is it you can't record? It's written on the website that all communication that you will have with customer agent is going to be recorded. So then he was also, of course, he was disappointed to also listen to himself that other way he spoke.
Yeah. And were all of these Indian customers or yeah, for
Indian
US maybe?
customers.
How is the US customer experience for you?
So very recently, like again, I got talking to the customer, and she was using these utensils for first time, and so she was unsure that the tin coating ko aisa ho gaya, like the color has changed, single use, so is it normal? So I actually ended up calling her and explaining her everything about the product. She was very polite to me. She understood everything very well, and also I said that I'll also send you complimentary Kalai kit the next time whenever you order something, because she wanted to order more products. And I asked her that please share the picture of the stoves that you guys are using there, because probably that is also something that actually creates an impact on the cooking experience. So she was a polite customer only. So I think up till now we haven't faced any. There are customers still who are like, मेरा सारा पैसा वापस करो, and then we say कि अच्छा ले लो सारा पैसा वापस, कोई बात नहीं. So there is
So
always.
I think there's a difference in the Indian versus US customers, but also Indian versus US AOVs, right?
AOV is so definitely, of course, because also the shipping expenses are like, I think India 50 rupees, there it's 500 rupees, so it's 10x.
So how do you manage this brand image of selling an AOV of 4,500 in India, but in the US your AOV is around
our
21?
AOV in India is also 6,500 currently,
Okay,
and our AOV in US is about 20,000 rupees
right.
because of the shipping charges ka difference only.
But does this create any irregularities within the brand for the people? Because I think most of your US clients are NRIs, right? Do they sometime cross check that who
Very, very rare. I mean, most of them understand that it's the shipping charges. Even if they will buy extra luggage, it's going to take some money to take all these utensils with them. So most of them understand that yes, shipping is higher from India to other countries
got it.
as a
Got it.
B2C brand also.
And in this whole journey of starting the product line from an idea to a 50 crore brand right now, where do you think comes the factor of raising money? Because that's again a very big factor, and I've heard a lot of this debate around raising money from angels, raising money from VCs, and not raising at all and being bootstrapped. You've been on the both ends of the table, right? You've built the brand bootstrapped completely, then you've gone on to raise around some of the best VCs and angels. You have some of the best names in D2C like Arjun Vaidya and all in your cap table, and you're also raised from Titan. So being on both the sides of the table, what do you think is the sweet spot? Do I build a brand purely from an intention that I want to keep this bootstrapped? Do I start building the brand from the day one thinking that, hey, I want to raise money at some point? What is that point? Even if I want to raise, do I put an angel versus VC debate in my board, or how does this work out?
I think when you're building out, so the number one point is the conviction that you have in your own product. Do you think it's a VC product, or do you think it's more of a bootstrapped product? For
How
us,
do you answer this?
for us, it is a bootstrapped business. It
Okay.
should be ideally a bootstrapped business only. But for us, what happened was it's a game of category creation. If we were just selling steel ke bartan, there's already a very big market for it,
Okay.
and we wouldn't have absolutely needed money for it. 100%. I don't see any steelware brand coming out in the market and saying पैसा दे दो, and कोई उनको पैसा भी दे रहा है क्योंकि नहीं चाहिए, वो category created है. It's just they have to get into the business and just sell to all. GT में बेचना है, Amazon में बेचना है, super sellers के through बेचना है. They just have to figure out how they are selling. But the category exists. For us, we didn't realize that we are playing the game of category creation. Once the category created, a lot of people started coming in. Everybody knew the category is there. It exists. People are buying brass, copper, and Kansa utensils again. Lot of generational people who have generational business into the category started selling online. So we were like, अब तो पैसा उठाना पड़ेगा. Otherwise, we have done all this effort in educating the customer, creating the category, and somebody is going to take away the piece of the cake.
Got it.
So that's when, I think it has to be very natural. That decision has to come in very naturally for the brand. That probably, and also that time investors are not sitting there to just give you the money, right? They will have 100 types of questions, and uh, I don't know every question is relevant for you as a founder, but a lot of them will make you question your own business. Do you want to do this or do you not want to do this? Do you want to do this or do you not want to do this? So I think those are the questions that you also have to answer. That can it be an 8,000 crore company? Are there examples in this type of category who have created businesses like that? Yeah, Prestige, Hawkins are all in the kitchenware, cookware category, and they've created IPO brands. So, okay, that is possible. Not like it's impossible or it's never going to happen. So, when you're getting onto that valuation game, you have to be sure that at the end of the day, you have to give exit to people who is investing in you. So,
Right.
that thought, the line of thought has to be clear that it's no more me and my business. Now it's lot of stakeholders involved.
And when was that stage for you that you decided, okay, now we need to like how long into the business you decided that now we need to raise, and now is there plans for further funding as well?
So how long in the business we decided? 2020 is when we properly started working, right? Like properly like a business we started working. 2023 we did our first round of VC. So I think 3 years. Yeah, 3 years. We were totally bootstrapped.
Wow.
And after that, 24 last year Shark Tank round happened. And now once you are into that VC game, so of course you at any point of time have to keep talking to people and keep them updated about what is happening in your business. So yeah, we will do a round eventually.
Nice. Great. So all the best for that.
Thank you.
I think I have now the whole playbook, and this starting from the idea conception to making the first SKU to having a healthy margin, paying fairly to the artisan, but also keeping margins healthy, going US, going international, keeping margins there healthy as well, all the export duties and everything. And now I'm a 50 crore brand, and now I'll probably look after like IPO or raising around and get even bigger. So that was a really helpful playbook, Kirti. I want to spend the last 15 minutes into a little bit about the non contemporary things about it. So there's a little bit of rapid fire I have for you. So just answer me in sort of one line or two lines at max, right? So VCs versus angels, what would you pick?
VCs versus angels. Whatever is relevant for the business. If I still have to pick one, I think it'll be angels.
And any particular reason for that?
Because most angels are coming from that background of already building their own businesses. So they will not, they know the founder conviction. They understand that sometimes we are working out of our gut, and sometimes those gut decisions are right.
All right. Favorite shark?
Okay, from the Shark Tank, the people who invested, I think Anupam is very nice. I like him.
And why?
Because he's a call away.
Oh,
Like you can at any point of time, and not just me, all the founders that I've spoken to, whom Anupam have invested in, they talk very highly of him. They're like, he is one of the best people. Like anybody goes to Bombay and texts him, so he will meet you.
oh, nice.
So I think he's a very nice chap. And his knowledge is also top notch. Because he has invested in so many companies that he understands a lot of them.
Has there been a time in your journey also that Anupam sort of said something and you're like, oh, even I did not know this. How did this guy know this?
Oh, itna I don't know, but he connected us to Blinkit. So that was really helpful when Blinkit
Got
was
it.
not onboarding banks.
So your favorite founder dynamics. So what's your favorite? Like you are two guys, one girl, right? And there are sometimes solo founders. There are sometimes two founders, both of them boys, both of them girls, one boy, one girl, three founders. What's your favorite founder dynamics?
I have worked 3, so I like 3. I don't know now which is better, but I think 3 founders is good.
But ऐसा कभी हुआ है कि okay, these two guys who got मतलब Harvey on a female founder, or you're the one that, hey, this is what I am saying and this is what's gonna happen. ऐसा कभी हुआ है?
नहीं नहीं, मेरे तो फाउंडर्स बहुत अच्छे हैं। तो ऐसा नहीं हुआ है कभी when I feel that they are overpowering me, and if I ever feel like that I will like really bash them. I'll be like, no, you can't do this to me, no,
Which also brings me to the point that you recently got married to your co-founder Gaurav, right? And congratulations on that, first of
Thank
all. I know it's been 1.5 years, but still. But how is the dynamics at home now? Do you like, so me and my co-founder, we live in the same room and
you.
we talk about business the whole day, right? So there is literally no time for your personal thing or your, but that is still when we are, both of us are like male founders living in a room, bachelor life and all of that. You are now into a married life. There are some external responsibilities on your end. Do you still think that having a spouse as your business partner is a pro or a con, and why so?
For a woman, I will only answer it from a woman perspective. It's a pro because as a woman, if I was not with my co-founder, nobody would understand my passion and ambition for what I'm building. So if I was just married to one person who was probably into a mainstream business or job, wouldn't understand कि क्यों कर रही हो इतनी मेहनत क्या कर रही हो तुम. तो मुझे ये क्वेश्चन नहीं आंसर करने पड़ते. I know that I am building something and I'm really passionate about it and I don't have to answer those questions कि क्यों, because वो क्यों तो is unsaid, right? So I think as a woman it works great.
But then what about the work-life balance?
नहीं
Like,
होता.
there
नहीं
is no such
करता,
thing as
नहीं
work-life
exist
balance?
करता. I mean, we went to London after our marriage, like last year August. We were meeting customers there also. Okay, who are the people who have bought from us? We were texting them, meeting anywhere we would go. Oh, ये पीतल का है, ये copper का है. So it's tough. And but it's also nice, no? It's like raising a similar thing together. The vision is same, the goal is same. So I think it's okay, even if there is no work-life balance.
That's true actually. And even for a very early stage company, I mean, like if you're 10, 15 years into the business, probably then you can set up some SOPs, some
Hmm.
hierarchy. But for an early stage business, I think I personally believe that there should not be work-life balance.
Yeah.
Not only if there could be, but there should not be work-life balance. You should be all in. But do
Yeah.
you think you stand by the same mantra as well? That there should not be any work-life balance?
The idea of work-life balance is very different for different people, right? For me,
Hmm.
work-life balance is if I'm not getting any time in the day with my thoughts, that is when I feel that the work-life balance is really messed up for me.
Hmm.
If even 1 hour I'm giving myself just, navigating my thoughts and sitting quietly, probably meditating if possible. So that is work-life balance for me. So if
Hmm.
that 1 hour is happening every day for me, so I think everything else will take care of itself. So work life balance is very different. It's not work life balance is not chill on Saturday, Sunday, and work on the other 5 days. At least it's not that for me.
Right. But how does this dynamic work out between a power couple of co-founders? There, you're like, I'm taking care of the business in the office, and now I'm also taking care of the home where I'm at home. Then there are additional responsibilities being a wife and a daughter-in-law. And is there like some sort of dynamics there as well?
So I am very lucky with the kind of family. Like Gaurav's parents are very nice. Like they understand that the amount of work he puts in and the amount of work I put in is exactly the same. So I don't have to face any added responsibilities. In fact, they will say कि इस function पे जाना है. I was like नहीं जाना है. They will like okay ठीक है नहीं जाना है. We'll handle. And apart from that, home responsibilities, the major and the worst responsibility that as a wife I feel is खाने में क्या बनवाना है. बनाना नहीं है बट क्या बनवाना है सोचना is very difficult. So that is the only one added responsibility that extra I do. But apart from that, everything is shared.
Perfect. Yeah. So nice to hear that. I think we deviated from our rapid fire. So my next question for the rapid fire is, if not Petal, then what would have you been doing?
I would be an artist. I would be creating stuff. Yes, I would definitely be creating artisanal products for the extremely wealthy people of India, where I would say you only get this much of it. Either take it or leave it.
Got it. And would this be a business or just hobby?
No, it would be a business.
It
I'm a banya. I can't do things without ROI. So there would be a strong ROI to it, but there would be a very strong design factor to it.
Got it. Which shark do you think would survive in as a Thatera?
Hmm. Aman.
Is
He
it?
has a lot of energy. You need a lot of energy.
No one else would. Nice. Uh, and when it comes to you having, have you ever like asked them to visit the facility or anything like that? Have they visited any of that?
No, nothing like that has happened as of now. But yeah, but that's a good idea. We could do that.
All right. The next question is, what are the myths that you've heard about Petal as a brand on the internet? And have you gone on to bash them or like fix that?
Not directly bash them because that's the kind of debate people are having when they are unaware, right? So try to create awareness around it. So even the videos that I did personally around the tin coating and how to use these utensils, which are the best utensils to buy, how to cook in these utensils, were busting those myths only. So number one myth is foods turn poisonous in these utensils, which is
Hmm.
not true.
Hmm.
It's like Himachal mein the entire dham is cooked in these utensils without any tin coating, and it's completely safe and fine.
Got it. So, another interesting question. If your utensils had a voice, what Bollywood actor would some of the best-selling products would have?
Amitabh Bachchan, of course, that's the best voice, and
And what
Amitabh
what
Bachchan would
product
be
would
like a copper lagan for us because people love it in US. So that. Then apart from that, who else? So voice I like. I like Akshay Kumar's voice also. So probably water dispenser could be Akshay Kumar. So yeah.
Got it. And if I have to say, if your co-founders could attach a voice to the products,
Hmm.
which product will have each of your voices? Like, which product will have your voice, which product will have Aditya's voice, and which product will have Gaurav's voice?
I would be Parat
Why?
because I love that product. It's not about love. I think Parat is more feminine in nature. So that's why Parat. And a lot of households have Parat. It's just traditionally existed there, and every household is very happy to have a Parat. So Parat. Aditya would be Aditya wo- Aditya water dispenser. हाँ, मतलब it looks very nice and presentable everywhere, like very well presented. I mean, it's put on the right place, highly presentable. And Gaurav would be, um, I think Gaurav would be Lagan again. Very strong in his ideas, and he's mostly right about things. Like the kind of maturity he brings in is usually right.
Got it. If as clever, if I can hold hand over one superpower about data, what would that be for you? Like this one thing I need on top of everything, and this is the one thing that I would like need at every day of the life, which probably is not being solved by the current tools that you might be using.
Just diagnose my channel wise MIS. Like Shopify, how much did we spend to have every order? Were all of those orders processed? To what did we spend to fulfill those orders? To what was my CM2 for every channel separately?
Got it. Okay, this is the people who are listening. This is the space that you might want to build on.
Cost of products in every channel. What are the products performing better on which channel? What are the ads because of which they are performing better on that channel? Everything.
I'm sure Clever would be able to solve that for you because we're launching our product very soon and you are one of our
Yes.
early customers. So we'll definitely do that for you. One of my favorite questions, which is also the last question of the podcast before we wrap up. Imagine you went back to 2017 and you were about to start Petal. But the catch here is that you still retain all of the knowledge that you have in 2025. What are the three things that you would do exactly the same? And what are the three things that you would not do at all, what you did here, uh, to probably reach where you are right now faster?
I think I would have explored the D2C space a lot earlier. 2017, the CACs were nothing. The customer acquisition cost was absolutely nothing. D2C was very new in India. And I would have not wasted my time creating uh, the home decor products and stuff, I would have straight away gone for cookware and kitchenware in the online D2C space after testing which are the best 5 products, and only started with 5 products, not expanded the SKU list to a lot of them. I think
And what would you think that you would do exactly the same?
3 things that I would do exactly the same would be like in COVID when we got the digital marketing guy, that was the best decision we had because none of us knew how to do digital marketing ourselves. I think that really helped. Then we started creating a lot of content during COVID, which worked very well for us. So content I would do exactly like we are doing right now. Uh, the marketing bit also I would do exactly like we are doing right now. And I think the way we are looking at products and diagnosing every product and solving people's problems and artisans' problems would still be the same.
That's really mindful of you. Just any last ending comments to the women entrepreneurs out there who are looking at you as a role model, who wants to get into D2C but probably are like stuck somewhere, and what motivated you as a woman entrepreneur and a woman founder? What would be the closing lines from you to these women?
To women entrepreneurs would be, or to women in general would be, never trade off your independence, freedom for anything in life. That resonates very strongly with me. If your parents ever tell you कि बेटा काम तो हो जाएगा, पहले शादी कर लो, don't do that. First, the freedom and independence and your own money has to come in. After that, anything else.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kirti. This was really insightful and amazing for you. But the credentials of Kirti to get her, follow her on Instagram and LinkedIn and everything would be linked to the description below. Go check out petal.in, check out Kirti. Thank you so much, Kirti, for doing this with us. It was lovely talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you again in Bangalore sometime soon.
Thank you, Yuvraj. It was a great conversation, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.